Well, the first thing that distinguishes a primary from a caucus is that you get usually a secret ballot in a primary. So people don't know for whom you voted. Whereas in a caucus, part of the process is some demonstration either by voicing or raising your hand about which candidate you support. So that's a critical difference. It's also important to note that the rules vary by state. Some states you have to register to vote by party, and so in effect you have declared that you want to participate in a closed primary only for your party. Other states have open primaries where you can ask for whichever ballot you want, only one, but either the Democratic or Republican ballot. The other distinguishing characteristic is, of course, the calendar, which is set by the states. And the states move around from presidential cycle to presidential cycle. New Hampshire and Iowa have been accorded a special place. The dates of their events are set by their state legislature, but the national parties have allowed them to always go first. That's created some issues in contemporary politics about whether or not these relatively small, homogeneous white electorates are representative of the national electorate. And as the Democratic Party in particular has become more heterogeneous, this has raised particular questions about their selection process. Well, the selection of the party's nominee is a party-based decision-making process. And so there's always been a kind of symbiotic relationship between the people who are election administrators who run elections and the two major parties in the United States who generally select the candidates to run for various offices. But they have to be synchronized because an election is a complicated administrative process that's also very expensive. Even though it's the party selecting the candidates, it's the state that's paying for it. So they work very closely together, even though they try to maintain an arm's length relationship. In the current processes, of course, the participation is very low. And in many states, the turnout is in the single digits, rarely getting above 15%. So, first of all, the people who are most influential in selecting the nominee are very few in number. And secondly, the nature of the process is that something that we call winnowing, the shrinking of the field, takes place very rapidly. And if your state comes late in the process, it might not have any influence at all in the selection of the eventual nominee. In the case of California, for example, the most populous state in the country, they have the most expensive elections to run. They tried for some time to hold an early election in addition to their regular statewide primary, which is in June. And that turned out to be too much for them. And they moved back to holding the presidential primary simultaneous with the state primary. But they were left out for several cycles from selecting the nominee, and it's one of the strongest Democratic states, of course, in the country. So this year they moved their presidential primary back to Super Tuesday in March because they want to exert some influence over who the nominee will be. Well, an incumbent president holds a number of advantages. First of all, it's their ability to sway the decisions that are made at the state level about how to organize the events and what the criteria are for getting on the ballot. A first-term president seeking re-election is always interested in minimizing the size and the strength of the field in opposition. And in the 2020 sequence, there have already been five states that have canceled Republican events, and it's possible that there would be more. So you can see in the rhythm of the events that depending upon whether you're the in party or the out party, the calendar could be altered in different ways.